You found the skeleton. How would you tell if it's a representative? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
Hey everybody, welcome to Dapper Reacts number 76, First Nation Creationism, where we are not here to talk about how weird it is that if I had a nickel for every time Star Trek managed to show a really, really bad version of a bird skull, that I would have 2 nickels. Because, you know, it's kind of weird that it happened at all, never mind twice. We're definitely not here to talk about that. Anyway, Asta Canis Lupus Familiaris Chihuahuensis Ryu for 499 says, if this First Nation Creationism is just Christian Young Earth Creationism, but the Locutor is native instead of white, I'm taking 5 drinks right at the beginning. You might as well just take 5 drinks. And then Roshina Cereal is Soup Keller, who's been a member for 10 months, is at the Tetraball level, says, cheers to mayonnaise, jello, salad. That does not sound like something I would enjoy, but I am happy that you do. Vishanti, how are you today?
A little bit photosensitive, but that's just a thing that my eyeballs do sometimes.
Yeah.
And yeah, I got a nice announcement for the end of the stream.
Very cool. All right, well, hello to everyone.
Audience, such as it is, will have to wait in Antissa.
Ah.
I'm literally gonna not finish it till the end.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. Well, Starsong, who's been a member for 2 months, says, hello, Dapper. Love the videos. Thank you very much. I am very happy that you are loving the videos and that you're here watching today. All right. So what are we doing today? Well, first of all, we are doing the drinking rules. I explained them on Tuesday. I'm not going to explain them right now. You guys know what they are. And if you don't, you'll catch on. But if you do decide to play along, first of all, please be safe. Also, if you want to play along but you don't want to use any kind of alcoholic beverage, that is absolutely fine too. You can use water, juice, soda, tea, coffee, I don't care, a vape pen. You can just, you know, like, if you're watching with someone else, you can give them a high five every time there's a drink trigger. I don't care. Whatever you want. Just if you do play with something that is intoxicating, please be safe, know your limits, pace yourself. And afterwards, don't go out and do something silly like drive a car, operate heavy machinery, fly an airplane or a helicopter, or text your ex. Don't do it. It's not worth it. We here at the Dapper Dinosaur Show, as, you know, myself personally, Vishanti personally, and the channel as a whole, we don't accept liability or responsibility for anything that you do as a result of playing along of your own free will. Also, we got Lesbi Andrea, who's been a member for 11 months and is at the Amniote level and says almost a year now with a Godzilla, and we will drink for that Godzilla. Thank you very much, Lesbi Andrea. All right, so what are we doing today?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I agree with Marianne the Night Owl, who's saying coffee, coffee, coffee.
Yeah.
There's a little cumbia song that's been going viral with these cute little doodles of a concha and a cup of coffee. And it's just like, quiero café, quiero café, quiero café, con pan, con pan. And it's just like the little concha just does a little dance. It's very cute. And that's been in my head every day this week.
All right, so we're taking a look at a video from the YouTube archive of a TV channel from Saskatchewan called Tribal Trails. Now, Tribal Trails is itself a production put on by a number of individuals from the Cree, which is the Cree are a subgroup of the Algonquin group of First Nations and American Indians. So there you go, that's who that is. Now, I don't want to say that I just dislike this channel overall. They actually have some stuff that I think is very valuable on there, especially in the form of putting songs into Cree, because that is a valuable aspect of language preservation, is having more and more texts and songs and things like that in Cree. So Russian Cereal is Soup Keller for 199 says, don't chug vape juice on AIGs and politics. We'll take a drink for it though. So yeah, this is not me saying, oh, like, everything that Tribal Trails is doing is terrible. And no, they're at the very least providing one important service. Now, have I looked through their entire archive? No. I just found this randomly while I was looking for Creationist nonsense. And then I just kind of skimmed the rest of their channel, and I saw that one of the things they were doing was putting up music in Cree, which I find to be a very admirable thing. So Please don't take this as me saying this channel is just nonsense. They have some nonsense there, but
this would give me the same mixed feelings if it was like a Nawak channel.
Exactly.
And they were, playing music, doing poetry, which, by the way, Nawak poetry is very cool. And they were also putting up younger creationism stuff. I would be very, conflicted and upset. Because I'd be like, great! Look at this language. It still has, 1 million native speakers, and you're preserving poetry and language, but you're also spreading a bunch of crap.
Yeah, so that's we are solely here to take a look at the pseudoscience nonsense, because as far as I'm concerned, the Kree deserve better than having people saying nonsense about the history of the planet. No one deserves to have that happening to them. And so I want to say, if anyone from Tribal Trails is looking, please keep up with all the songs. If you want to keep up with the Bible study stuff that you also have on there, I don't care, that's fine. Just stop with the pseudoscience. That's it. All I ask. DM Google Debunker Wing, who's been a member for 25 months, is at the amulet level, says, are there Jaffa Kree? And I don't know, but there is a Godzilla and a Mothra and a Ghidorah and an AIG's a bag of dicks, so we will take a drink. And then, of course, Hazel Creek, there we go, gifted a membership. We'll take a drink for that.
Oh, by the way, Kent Hovind got bodied by Mandisa from Black Non-Believers.
Really?
Yeah. There's a video on their Black Non-Believers channel right now about it.
You will,
Ethered. Send him to the Shadow Realm. Good stuff. Go Mandisa. Yeah.
Nice. Alright, so we've got, from Asta Canis Lupus Familiar and Chihuahua Ensis Ryu for 199. AIG is a bag of Scrabble tiles, which is not a Scrabble tile that you normally get. In fact, I had to think about how to actually pronounce because that is a labiodental plosive, which is I don't know. Anyway, we're gonna hit play now. we're gonna hit play now. Here we go.
To life eternal.
Hi and welcome to Tribal Trails. Today we're here with Dr. Gary Parker. We hear that fossils take a long time, millions of years.
People just...
So that's where they're starting off. And here's the thing, right? This is one of those things where it's you know how you learn the very basics of something in your 8th year of schooling or something like that, 8th grade or something like that. And then you get a few years on in your schooling and you hear, oh, well, it's not that simple. There's more to it. And then you get to college and then okay, well, it's a whole lot more complicated than you thought, right? The meme typically goes with the causes of wars, right? In the 8th grade, you'd be oh yeah, the World War II was totally fought to stop the Holocaust. And then by the time you're in college, you're yeah, well, the United States
there's a lot more going on.
Kind of knew that the United States only kind of knew that was really happening, and there were a whole lot of other socioeconomical issues, and there was this whole Anglophilia in the United States federal government, and then there was the fact that the Japanese attacked, which dragged the United States into the war.
Did people just forget that Japan existed, Imperial Japan?
So
yeah,
and that's kind of what's going on here, right? You might learn in school it takes millions of years to form, but it's more complicated than that, right? Many fossils, it does take a very long time to form, because certain kinds of permineralization simply do not go fast. That's just a fact of chemistry and physics. But on the other hand, given the right conditions, you can get the body of an organism to permineralize, at least whatever it's going to permineralize, in, a very short time, relatively speaking. But the question is, does that obtain to all fossils? And the answer is no. That's just not going to. For instance, there are actually fossils made of opal. They're called opaline fossils or opalized fossils. You can't get that in a few hundred years. It's just not going to work. Opal takes a while to form. We know that. And it's oh, but we could form it in a lab faster. It's yes, but under conditions that there's no reason to think exist in nature, right? The same thing when people are well, we can, grow diamonds in a lab in a few months. Yeah, but you have to use temperatures and pressures that are not known to exist even in the depths of the earth. So, And you're also super saturating the solution with all these crystal seeds, and you're making everything absolutely ideal in a way that nature just doesn't do. So, yeah, it's a kind of like that. So this guy is going to obviously be telling us that, oh no, fossils can form fast. And they can. but not all of them can. And you need to be able to account for all the fossils in order for young Earth creationism to work. And also, this guy should probably keep up with his tips if he's going to go on camera. Or sorry, his roots if he's going to go on camera. Just putting that out there.
Nah, he's probably fine with going gray.
But that's the thing.
I mean, it looks like he just abruptly stopped. I mean, so he probably is fine. Like, he probably realizes that having, like,
the gray
dark
roots.
hair is going to start looking a little weird, so
he's just, yeah, I guess. But in that case,
he's just letting it go.
That's when I say, like, okay, yeah, but, like, close crop your hair so you get rid of everything that isn't the root. And then...
Honestly, no. Like, my stepdad, this happened to him. He was using hair color to kind of stave off the gray for a while. And then after a few years, he was like, you know what, this is dumb. I'm just going to stop. It's not. Just no. And so he just let it go. And so he had this, like, really stark line. He just didn't care.
Yeah. So we do have a question about whether or not this is a Christian group. And yes, it is. I do not know the history of how this group of people became Christian. I don't know the degree to which there was coercion. I don't know anything about that. So don't know. So I can't say. There are definitely groups of people who became Christian because they decided that that's what they wanted to do, and no one was coercing them. And I can't tell them not to.
I know, I just have mixed feelings about all that.
But there's also groups that didn't do that. And even then, what do I tell the adults? Like, I can say, oh, hey, your ancestors, the reason you're Christian now, they were coerced into this. But they might choose not to care, and I don't get to tell them what religion to be. So, yep, I don't know the degree to which the Christian identity among this group of First Nations was adopted under problematic circumstances, shall we say. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I think fossils millions of years go hand in hand, but
they do that for more reasons than just that's how long it takes for them to form, right? If a fossil forms in like an hour, but it formed 500 million years ago, the fact that it formed fast doesn't stop it from being 500 million years old. And so that's another problem. You also need to account for the fact that we can date the rock layers that the fossils are found in. And no matter how fast they formed, if you find a fossil in a 500 billion year old rock layer, you're going to have to account for that dating. Too Young to Feel As Old, who's been a member for 23 months and is at the Seropsa level, says, listening to stream while working out, and it's chest day, so I will add 10 push-ups to the end of the workout for every drink on the counter at the end of the stream. Well, there's already 30 more push-ups going on there, so hey, can we make Too Young...
Interesting.
Can we make Too Young to Feel This Old to get to thousands of push-ups? There's the question.
Woo!
Because, next thing you know, Too Young to Feel This Old is just in the hospital with just shattered pectoral muscles.
Really.
Fossils have to form fast, or they don't form at all.
That is incorrect. We're just going to take a drink. There is nothing in taphonomy that says that fossils have to form fast or they don't form at all. Many fossils take a very long time to form. They just have to form faster than the natural decay rate of the structures that are being permineralized, which in the case of bones in places like anoxic environments covered by large amounts of sediment, it's a very, very, very slow rate.
And so a fossil is a remains or trace of a once living thing preserved in some kind of geological
Is there a way we
deposit,
can watch this on 1.25?
There absolutely
I feel like
is.
he's wading through like a puddle of molasses.
Yeah.
Goodness gracious!
Actually, there's only 1.2 or 1.3. Which one would you prefer?
1.3. I'm a contrarian.
Okay.
So it doesn't count mummies, and things deliberately buried. But
actually, it would count mummies and things deliberately buried. It's just that none of them are old enough. That's the thing. The actual definition for a fossil is completely arbitrary, right? Paleontologists broadly have just decided that 10,000 years is the cutoff. If something's 10,000 years old and it's a trace of a living organism, it's a fossil. It's either a body fossil or an ichthyofossil. That's just what it is.
Someone in the chat is asking what media player you're using.
Oh, this is GOM right now.
Oh.
Almost entirely because it remembers where I left off. And it does that automatically.
Staring at you, VLC.
if a plant or an animal just dies and falls to the ground or falls in a lake or a stream, it's just going to get eaten up by scavengers of fungus, bacteria, things like that.
That depends on the lake or stream. If something falls into Lake Natron in Africa, it's not going to get eaten by anything.
I was gonna say, if you fall into the Salton Sea out here, you're not getting eaten. You're gonna find like yourself covered in freaking salt crystals within a few days.
Exactly. There are a lot of places where if an organism falls in, it's getting fossilized that are currently going right now.
It's going to be decomposed very quickly, so it's going to disappear. It's not going to fossilize.
It depends.
You really have to preserve
What if you're in a
quickly.
desert?
Yeah, that's another one. We'll just drink for this, like, fossils aren't going to just form. It's like, they absolutely are going to form. They're forming right now. Actually, Joel Duff, who's a friend of the channel, who's been on the show a few times, he actually knows of a location where there are currently some footprints that are already coming up on 100 years old. And they're out, like, in Death Valley. And there is absolutely nothing currently that would prevent those from lasting for tens of millions of years.
Yeah.
And they're just some guys'
Bro, it's
footprints.
hot out there.
Oh,
Woo!
But yeah, they're just some guys' like boot prints from like a century ago. And there's a trail of boot prints that have just been there. They're not going anywhere. I mean, someone might destroy them, I guess, but like there's currently no foreseeable thing that's going to prevent those from existing for millions and millions of years. So, yeah. Even ichnofossils, even things as simple as boot prints. Roshina Cereal is Soup Keller for $4.99 says, so it's not even that that something has to be pre-Holocene to be a fossil. It's just an arbitrary 10,000 years. That is my understanding last I looked into the definition. Yes. There has to be a number, and that's just kind of where it is. Now, you also hear things like fossilization means permineralization, and subfossils are partially permineralized. And that's a bit of ambiguity. And yeah, because subfossils don't actually have to be 10,000 years ago. They're just partially permineralized, which is a confusing thing to call something. I would prefer that we just call such things partially permineralized, but I'm not in charge of any
It's a
of that.
mouthful, though.
Yeah, it is, but it's less ambiguous. Also,
Sounds
I
like
just have to
unwelcome
say,
nuance.
the existence of subfossils implies the existence of dom fossils.
Dom fossils.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
I was doing a radio program, and a fellow says, well, you have to believe
And switch fossils. We can't forget the switch fossils.
it took millions of years to form fossils. I've been to the Petrified forest in Arizona, and he says they're great big trees, 100 feet, over 30 meters long, stretched out, turned to solid rock. He said, it must have taken millions of years to turn those great big trees into solid rock.
No, it almost certainly didn't. So the Petrified Forest is actually a remain of a swampy area. It was sort of like a bog, although at the time, the distinction between a swamp and a bog is less clear than it is today. But anyway, in these swampy areas were flooded periodically. And so trees would get flooded over, they would tend to die, a new soil would establish itself at the new higher level. And we actually have things like repeated paleosol horizons, right? Where we have fossilized soil, complete with fossilized roots of shallow-rooted plants and things like that. And repeatedly. So we know this couldn't have all happened in one flood. But further, one of the reasons that these trees can stick around so long in order to be fossilized, which still takes a while, but not millions of years in this case, is because there doesn't seem to have been anything that could digest lignin that had evolved yet. Because only a fairly small group of organisms today can actually digest lignin. There's a few different kinds of fungus and a few different bacteria. And lignin is the main structural protein of a tree trunk, right? It's sort of like the collagen of trees. Collagen is the protein that helps keep animals stuck together. It's the glue of the animal world. Well, for trees, it's lignin. Lignin is what helps them stay as upright, stiff-stemmed plants. And if nothing can eat that, then it can last a whole lot longer. And even today, you can see a tree stump that has been around for decades and decades. Think about how much longer it could stick around if literally nothing could eat it. No termites, no mushrooms, no bacteria that could digest that. It's just going to stick around. That's also why we call this period like the Carboniferous. It's because the plant matter that was woody just didn't decay away. It stuck around so that it could later be compactified into coal. That's one of the reasons why later forests don't provide as much coal in the fossil record, because things ate the forest. So, yeah.
And so I said to him, well, let's think about that a minute. If a tree fell over in a forest or a lake or a stream and just lay there for millions of years, wouldn't the termites get at it? Wouldn't the fungus begin to break it down? Wouldn't the woodpeckers and...
Hey, what did I just say didn't exist when these trees were formed? Was it termites and mushrooms that eat wood? Yeah. Jeez, I'm gonna take a drink. I'm gonna take another drink for a confirmed prediction. I'm just gonna call it. I don't care. Making Too Young to Feel This Old do some work.
The beetles dig holes in it. And so I said, they're going to rot, they're going to decompose. But imagine those trees got swept up in a slurry of limey mud or volcanic ash.
Okay, but this... I have to take another drink. The sediment at the Petrified Forest isn't volcanic ash or limey muck. That's not what it is. Whatever.
They got buried so deep and so fast, termites, the woodpeckers, the fungus couldn't get at them, and the minerals in the watery slurry that buried them, minerals would crystallize in the empty spaces in the wood, and harden up, and it would preserve it so we could see it today. You know what he said? Oh, I think you're right about that.
Well, that's a weird thing for him to say, because it would take just trivially small amounts of further investigation to realize that that's really, really, really bad reasoning. But on the other hand, I will say, I don't know how long it takes for these trees to have turned into petrified trees, right? Like, I actually don't know. I don't particularly care, because the fact is that we don't date them to being from the Carboniferous period, which was hundreds of millions of years ago, because of how long we think it took for them to turn it from, wood to stone. It's not the reason that we date them that old. So it's a very strange thing, right? It's sort of like telling someone with like a classic 1950s muscle car that their car actually isn't 70 years old. It's actually only like 5 years old, because it takes way less time than 70 years to make a muscle car. So obviously it can't be 70 years old. It's like that doesn't follow at all. That doesn't make sense. There's no through line. The reason that we think that fossils are old is not because it takes a long time for them to form. We know that in some cases it doesn't. It's because we can date the rock layers they're found in.
First instant convert I ever made.
Yeah.
I don't even think that was an instant convert that you made. We're just going to take a drink for a story that didn't happen. I don't think that you found some guy, you gave him your weird excuse as to why petrified trees could form quickly, and then suddenly he became a young Earth creationist Christian. I just don't believe that, buddy.
And I had students at the Petrified Forest one time, and so I'm out there showing them all these petrified trees, and a ranger comes trucking up, and she goes, "Oh, I'm so glad you all came." She was really wanting to talk to somebody. And she says, we call this the Petrified Forest. Now, this is a ranger. She said, but maybe we should call it the Petrified Log Jam. And she said, look out, it was on a hill there.
Oh, yeah, that was a joke that didn't land. I'll take a drink for that. Dr. Dino for $5 says, gonna be giving a presentation about sauropods in a few hours, 3.5 with Vandalia 1998. I'll also have news on my expedition to share. Paid ad. There you go. Awesome. I am actually very curious to see how that expedition goes. Or went, I suppose, because I believe it's already over. So, awesome. All right, here we go.
Just look out and you can see all these trees, all these petrified trees are all lined up, pointed in the same direction, like loggers cutting trees and
But they're not all pointed in the same direction, though. Like, there's a more common direction for them, but they're not all pointed in the same direction. And also, part of the reason that the Petrified Forest, like, formed was repeated flooding in a wetland area. So, yeah, like, the fact that you will find evidence of flooding is what everyone expects. The problem is, if you're trying to argue for a single worldwide flood, then you have to argue that all of this occurred in one flood. But like I said, we have multiple soil horizons within these strata. And soil isn't something that forms overnight after a flood, or during a flood for that matter, right? Soil is not just a bunch of sediment. It is sediment, it's organic material, it's held together by things like plant roots. It's churned through by various animals, like worms and insects and things like that. It has bacteria establish nitrogen fixation so that plants can grow. Like, there's a lot of stuff that it takes to turn some muck into soil so that plants can put down roots, so that you can get the reestablishment of the ecosystem. And we see this repeatedly at the Petrified Forest. Multiple soil horizons, which means that every single soil horizon that you see represents probably at least decades worth of growth, which means you cannot account for this formation in a flood, even though it is the result of flooding. It requires multiple floods. Unless, of course, this guy wants to tell us how you can get a soil complete with roots established underneath a single flood at multiple layers in less than a year.
Floating them down a river.
Dapper, have you considered reasons?
Okay, I have not. That is a good point.
I rest my case.
Fair enough.
Notice they don't have any branches. They don't have any leaves. They've been sheared off at the roots. Well, so they.
No, they have not all been sheared off at the roots. In fact, many in situ fossils remain. And, like, I've been here, right? There are places where you can go, and you can see upright fossils still embedded in the sides of the, like, there's, like, in a little valley, right? And there's some cliffs around it. And you can go and look and see in situ fossil trees. It's, like, that's also a thing that happens. DM Google Debunker Wing for $2 says, remember Kent asking where the dirt between layers was? Yeah, that was a weird thing for him to ask, because in one case, I mean, it's just right there. You can just see it. But also, in most cases, he just fundamentally doesn't understand how sedimentation works at a very, very basic level. So, yeah. That's just, yeah, it's very weird of him.
More trees that were growing in place, you know, and it looks like they've been ripped up branches, just like when Mount St. Helens, you know, erupted in the state of Oregon, or excuse me, Washington.
Washington? Okay.
I'm gonna take another drink. Okay, here's the thing about that. So a bunch of logs did get washed into Spirit Lake, and they did sink more or less vertically, and a bunch of them did get embedded into the muck at the bottom of the lake in a roughly vertical orientation. But here's the thing. That sediment is already tophaceous, which is not in line with the sediment we're seeing here. Second, would you care to guess how many soil horizons are forming at the bottom of Spirit Lake?
I would not care to guess that, no.
It's 0.
Because I always get these questions wrong.
Fair enough. It's 0. You don't get surface soil horizons at the bottom of a lake. Further, these trees are not going to be buried with in-situ roots. Now, parts of their roots are going to be there because some of these trees were pulled up by the roots, right? But the smaller, thinner roots are going to be broken off, which is not what we typically see in petrified forest, where in many cases, the roots are pretty intact and are below a nearby soil horizon, meaning that these trees were buried upright where they grew in the first place. Now, okay, look, before anyone gets on me about this, they're technically not trees in the modern sense, you know, they're lycopod trees, whatever. They're not closely related to any modern tree, but they are related to tiny little club moss. Okay, we got that out of the way. There's always going to be someone who's going to push up their glasses and be like, well, actually, these were club moss trees. Yep, okay.
Back in 1980, a big slurry of landslide of mud rushed down the side.
It was mostly ash, but okay. Roshan, Cereal is Soup Keller for $1.99 says, Sigh, I was hoping for some new young Earth creationist talking. Look, creationists get new talking points about once every 20 years or so. It's... there is just no progress.
Yeah, okay, I'll give it to you.
Yeah, it's so rare.
That mountain, some of it went into Spirit Lake. Washed a wave of water 864 feet up the side of a hill, sheared off more than 1 million trees in a matter of minutes. Broke off the branches, the leaves, sheared them off at root level, washed out as floating logs, over the lake. And as they'd sink, as they'd waterlog.
Hey, it's been like, what, 30-something, almost 40 years since that happened, right? Anybody care to check if those are petrified?
Yeah, that will be an interesting exercise, because it's been about, 44 years or so? Yeah.
I mean, I would think that young Earth creationists would be setting up camp.
You would think that, but the weird thing is, creationists are like really, really loath to actually do research by and large. It's honestly weird, because they like to say like, oh, we're a research organization and whatnot. It's like, hey, you guys know that you got together like $140 million to build a boat-shaped building in the middle of Kentucky, right?
And got tax breaks for it.
Yeah. Do you
Even
realize,
though they say that they didn't.
Well, I mean, they definitely got tax breaks. They absolutely did.
They don't like you mentioning that because it makes them sound like they're getting government handouts.
What they tend to do is they tend to focus on people who say that they got government money to do it, which is not technically. They got off of taxes, which is not the same thing as the government handing them money that the government already had.
That's unwelcome nuance.
It is, and the thing is that what they want to do is they want to introduce that nuance. They want to make sure that everyone pays close attention to that nuance and does not pay attention to the nuanced point that while it's true that the government didn't hand them money, they absolutely excused them from paying the government money that anyone else would have had to pay, which is its own little form of government handout. I lost my train of thought. Oh, right, yeah. So if you guys can get together like $140 million, and that's the number that I just have swimming around my brain, I haven't checked, to build an ark, think about how many sedimentation experiments, how many experiments with fruit flies or fish or even monkeys or experiments in all sorts of things you could pay for with $140 million. Most grants are like a few $100,000, and people feel very, very, very lucky to get them. Creationists have a donation pool that could absolutely get them as much research as they could possibly want for the few people that are actually scientists or have at least scientific credentials inside Young Earth Creationism. All right, we just got 5 memberships gifted by Joshua Geese. Thank you very much. We'll take 5 drinks. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Thank you.
It would sink down like that into several layers. And she said, "Have you heard of Mount St. Helens?" Oh yeah, I don't know. It's God's gift to creation and flood geology.
It's not though.
It's really, really not. Ugh. It's all that happens is it just exposes just how bad at geology most creationists are. However, I'm going to say we have 112 people watching, which is amazing. Thank you very much, everybody. But I'm only seeing 60 likes. So, not quite enough for me to bilbo everyone. But hey, come on, help me out. Give me a like.
And she said it looks like logs can fossilize a lot quicker than we once thought.
We need a bingo square for looks like.
Seriously, first of all, yeah, looks like. Also, I have not seen any reports of any of the logs at Spirit Lake having been permineralized. Not a single one. Now, to be fair, maybe it's out there and I just haven't seen it. However, I think y'all know that I keep pretty close tabs on what creationists are doing, what they're talking about. And if they had found permineralized logs at Spirit Lake, given how much they love to talk about Mount St. Helens for silly reasons, I cannot imagine they would not be shouting about that from the rooftops. So I'm going out on a limb and saying, I don't think that's true. I think that that's not, in fact, a thing that is true. Now, I don't know enough about this guy to say that I think he's lying about this, because they called him Dr. Whatever, but I don't know what that
Dr. Whatever.
Well, they gave him a name, I just don't remember.
That's a crappy superhero name, Dr. Whatever.
Dr. Whatever, yeah. Hey, Doctor Strange is actually just his real name. Come on.
Look, I've never had a problem with that being his name, because in Alabama growing up, there was I think it was a federal judge or a state district judge, something like that. His name was Luther Strange, and he had billboards every election cycle to get him reelected into office. So I have grown up knowing that was just a surname that some people had, and it's a little unusual, but Dr. Strange, I was like, yeah.
Also, I gotta say, if that's your surname and you don't get a PhD or an MD or something like that, then what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Come on, you have to. You have to be able to introduce yourself as, oh, hi, I'm Dr. Strange. Skeletor over 9,000, who's been a member for 19 months, says, it seems no matter what their background, all EX pull their talking points from the same bag as AIG, with an AIG as a bag of dicks emoji, and we will take a drink for that. Thank you very much. Star Song for $5 says, it wasn't me, I already clicked the sinister hand. Thank you. Hasta Canis Lupus Familiaris Chihuahuensis Ryu for $4.99 says, if it looks like we're good enough, AIG would actually be a member of Preapulida. Instead, I have to joke that they are one in Super Chat. Awesome.
William Pye says, Dr. Whatever, master of the ambivalent arts.
Yes. Officially. Oh, by the way, in case anyone is wondering, Preapulida is named. That's the family name of the so-called penis worms, who are themselves named after the Greek god Priapus, who is the Greek god of having a dick so big he needs a wheelbarrow to carry it around. Which is actually like in the art. Yeah, he's usually got like.
Oh, my sister in the chat says my cat's veterinarian has Strange as his surname, and he gets so irritated when people bring up Doctor Strange. I wouldn't get irritated. I think that's cool as hell.
What I would do is I would just like put like a touch of gray through the sides of my hair.
Yeah, I would advertise it literally. And the fact that in the last like 5 years, Doctor Strange actually did a really bizarre turn as a veterinarian. You know what? I'll allow it. Yeah, I'm still really puzzled by that because it's not like you can go to med school for however many years of your life and then just switch to animals, but you know, whatever, it's a comic book.
Yeah, don't worry about it too much.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Also, I mean, hey, in the last few years, Doctor Strange has gone from being, I would say, probably more like B or C list on Marvel's roster to being A list as a result of the MCU.
Listen, I'm the only complaint that you're ever going to hear me make about that is the fact that there's too much merch to collect now. I used to have the opposite problem. Two of my friends that literally between them, they have the largest collection of Doctor Strange memorabilia on the planet.
Nice.
And I'm not joking about that, literally. One of them's been collecting for like 45 years.
You showed me the pictures.
He's got it on lock. No, they were complaining about the same thing, because it used to be like, oh, we would find these little niche items or like limited edition runs of stuff, and now it's just freaking everywhere, and one of them just gave up, like, he goes, you know, I just can't do the movie stuff. I can't. There's too much of it.
Officially unofficial suborbital platypus for 17, who's been a member for 17 months since at the tetrapod level says, let's see. Oh, Master Supervisor would flay me for using looks like. Yeah, no, absolutely. Look, looks like it's a good reason to start some research, right? Like, oh, hey, this looks like this thing. I'll look into it.
It's not the conclusion.
Right, it is the absolute worst place to stop your research. Because that's one of the things with a lot of pseudoscience stuff, right? Is they get to a point where it's like, okay, good, that's a cool question that asks all sorts of interesting implications. You've got a really cool thing to go research. And they're like, oh, but what if I just stopped and drew my conclusion now? And it's like, no, you do not understand how this is supposed to work. And that's one of the really frustrating things, is because, look, you could make a lot of really cool questions out of the types of things that young Earth creationists say and ask, and the questions they have about evolution and geology and astronomy, and there are great discussions to be had. Now, we know the answer to a lot of these questions that they have, but still, they're cool questions. But instead, they're just like, well, how could X, Y, and Z be the case? I guess it couldn't. Must have been God. Done research. And it's like, no. That is not how you're supposed to do things.
I don't remember if I mentioned this, but was it 2 weeks ago that you had Chesh and Kip on?
That sounds about right.
2 to 3. I wasn't there because I was supposed to be at VidCon all day, but then I got a last-minute offer the night before to go to Disneyland and California Adventure, so I ended up spending the entire day there and got to see the final performance of the Doctor Strange, like, mystic magic show performance thing. So it was a little bittersweet, but I had fun. It was very cool to see Doc doing, like, actual stage magic, so yeah.
Jillian, Saint blah 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 Ren, who's been a member for 16 months.
Blah blah blah.
And at the amniote level says, getting a happy birthday from Dapper was not the best thing that happened to Zane yesterday, but it was on the list with a Mothra emoji. Well, I'm very happy. And hey, Zane, if you're listening, a belated happy birthday. I hope you have a wonderful year. Many more
happy belated birthday, Zane. Also, Saint blah 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 is in the same, like, mediocre hero universe as Dr. Whatever and Officer So-and-so.
Yes, of course. Don't forget about Captain What's-Her-Name.
Exactly.
There's even a formula you can make petrified wood in the laboratory. Maybe the most fun specimen we have in our museum. We've got specimens of a family of mammoths we helped excavate. But the one that
okay, that's pretty cool. I hope they actually took proper paleontological controls and whatnot and got a nice site map and everything. But, I mean, that is unironically cool if you excavated a family of mammoths. That's... yeah.
That would actually be really cool.
Yeah.
fascinates most people is a fossil teddy bear.
That is not a fossil.
That's not a fossil teddy bear.
First of
That
all,
just looks like it's got like calcification
that's exactly what that is.
deposits or whatever it is on it. So
First let's take a drink here, because this is clearly not a fossil teddy bear. Because remember how fossils had to be traces of living organisms from 10,000 years ago or more? Is this thing either 10,000 years old or a formerly living organism? No. So we'll take a drink for that.
Yet again, creationists use a living example challenge. Possible.
So, the second thing is, this isn't even permineralized, right? This is calcium concretions. That's the same thing. If you've ever lived someplace that has hard water, right? You'll notice that your
Parents'
faucets
house.
or like your tea kettles or coffee pots or whatever, you'll
Yep.
get this
Getting all
hard
crispy.
white crust on the bottom of the pots and kettles or around the rim of the faucet. That's lime. It's a calcium concretion, right?
Soak that ish in some vinegar or Fabuloso or CLR.
That's what's happened to this teddy bear. It has been put under hard water, and when the water evaporates, it leaves behind what is essentially inorganic limestone, or non-biogenic limestone, which is the same thing that many caves are made of, right? Like stalactites and stalagmites, they're also made out of what has previously been dissolved as lime and is now evaporating as water either drips down from the ceiling or evaporates from the cave floor. That's what this is. And very, very hard water will leave very, very quick lime deposits on things. Calcification. That's what this is. Are most fossils just coated in a bunch of non-biogenic lime? No. No. That is not what fossils are, by and large. Are there any? I don't know. I've never heard of one. I guess it's possible. But that is not what the majority of them are. You don't have to scrape away a big layer of, like, calcium concretion from most fossils in order to get to the perfectly preserved organic material underneath. That's not how this works. Now, I mean, there are concretions that do form around fossils, but it is a very different formation process, and it does not just leave a thin crust of calcium. Let's see. Astacanus lupus familiaris Chihuahuan says Ryu for $4.99 says, I thought the leader of the whatever Vengers, there you go, was Captain Obvious with a Godzilla. Well, first we'll take a drink for that Godzilla. And here's the thing, there's more than one captain out there. So, you know. There's Captain Obvious. There's Captain What's-Her-Name. Yeah, just like, the Avengers, right? There's Captain America. But there's also Captain Marvel. They're both captains.
Except Steve Rogers isn't actually a captain in the military.
Don't worry about that.
He's actually got a really low rank, which is hilarious to me.
Yeah, they never really promoted him much, did they?
No, they didn't.
He's the Harry Kim of the Avengers.
He kind of is. Though there is some kind of weird technicalities going on with Bucky, because when he was, apparently killed, he was still a sergeant, which I find bizarre. Because if he got that far in the SSR and being like a hella good sniper and being on like Captain America's super secret task force, you'd think he'd make it past sergeant, but whatever.
Look, he didn't test well when it came to promotion tests. Bucky's just bad.
I doubt that.
Bucky's
I mean, unless they tested his. Well, here's the thing: he's really smart academically. That's canon to basically all universes, but I think maybe he was a little too sassy. That's also a constant.
Could be that.
So maybe that's why he failed promotion. He would tell people to piss off.
Also, Roachina Cereal is Soup Killer for $4.99 says, Teddy bears are alive. Don't insult Mr. Pansley. Okay.
My sister says a field commission, so yeah.
Yeah. Astacanus Lupus Familiaris Chihuahuensis Ryu for $1.99 says, isn't Carol Danvers also not a real captain? I actually don't know off the top of my head. I don't actually know what rank she is or was.
I mean, I remember seeing the rank bars on her costume, but I don't remember.
Was it a couple of silver bars?
No, it was 3, and I don't remember what color.
Are you sure
I'll
about
dig
that?
it out.
Because I don't think there's a 3-bar rank.
Well, the costume was meant to evoke her Air Force outfit. It wasn't a one-to-one, because that was a Kree uniform, obviously, so.
Hey, we're talking about Kree people today. No, different Kree.
Different Kree.
Which, by the way,
not the ones from Hala.
It's a little bit weird that the name of a alien race in Marvel is also the same as a First Nation group in Canada. It's a little weird.
And the race is from Stargate SG-1.
The Goa'uld?
No, what's I cannot remember this character's name. Jaffa Kree.
Oh,
remember
Jaffa
that?
Kree. Yeah, no, we had a super chat about that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Okay. So my wife and I were on a creation trip to England one time and stopped in a little town in Knaresborough, and there's a limestone ledge. A lot of water can flow easily through limestone. It's about...
So, stuff that builds up accretions? Mm-hmm. Oh, okay, limestone? Yeah. How about that?
Yeah, so it's calcium concretions. Yeah, great.
Yeah.
So it kind of breaks off, and water just drips out the end. And this dripping water, somebody asked a question with which science begins. I wonder what would happen if...
Fearmonger.
Great.
That's a good question. Says, tune into the next Marvel alien villains, the Iroquois.
Oh no. At least.
And yes, Liz D, thank you. It's Tilk. Oh my god.
At least.
Why is my brain doing things?
With Kree, it's a very simple syllable that it's very easy to just stumble upon, right?
Yeah.
It's like it's not
our drum major's real major.
Like, if someone was like, oh, look, these aliens are the Inupiaq, I'd be like, I don't believe that you just came up with that. I don't believe that at all. But if, with at least with the syllable Kree, it's like, okay, there's two consonants in a common cluster followed by a single vowel. Like, that's not exactly impossible for someone to just kind of come up with and not realize what they've done. So.
Yeah.
And so they took some soft, spongy things, teddy bears, felt hats, things like that, and just hung a few of them up in this dripping water coming out of the limestone.
And they just got lime accretions on them. How about that?
Yeah, weird.
Or calcium, whatever.
I mean, look, lime is mostly calcium.
Yeah.
Sure enough, the water evaporated, left the calcium carbonate, left the carbonate behind, and so it...
Hey, is that the same as fossils?
No, actually it's not. In fact, many fossils are found in things that aren't lime. Things like shale or sandstone. That's because that's the thing, right? Like, okay, if you want to make the argument that this explains fossils in limestone, first you have to explain the fact that these things have non-biogenic limestone on them, which is the vast minority of limestone. More than 90%, if I remember correctly, of limestone on Earth is biogenic limestone, which means that already this is right out. Fossils in limestone are almost always in biogenic limestone, which you might get from the name, that it's biogenic. It's the kind of stuff that forms when there's living things around. Weird, right? So there's that problem. Now, that's not to say that nothing ever gets preserved in non-biogenic limestone. In fact, we know of cave animals that have started to be covered by non-biogenic limestone. Those will probably turn into fossils eventually. Whatever. The vast majority of fossils in limestone are not in non-biogenic limestone. And it also does not cover any of the fossils that are found in any other kind of stone, which is, again, I don't actually know about most fossils. There's many, many fossils, right? Sandstone, shale, siltstone, mudstone, all of these are things that do not produce calcium carbonate, just coatings around things that would then preserve them. Plus, this process does not permineralize things. It doesn't actually replace the original material with bits of stone. Now, that doesn't happen in every fossil, but it does happen in some of them, which means that you cannot account for fossils broadly with this mechanism in any way. Basically, every single thing that we know about fossils, most fossils cannot be explained this way. Let's see. Masticanus lupus familiaris Schwawin says, Ryu for 499 says, alien race called Inupiaq is real. Damake High Water movie. Wait, is that... Hold on, is there actually an alien species in some sci-fi thing called the Inupiaq? Because that... Don't like that. Nope, don't like that.
The pore spaces and the teddy bear and the fossil hat and so on. And in
none of which are fossils.
Just 3 months, that soft, cuddly teddy bear was turned into a fossilized teddy bear. Fossilized in quotes, it wasn't once alive, but it's the same process
At least you
called
got there, we'll take a drink.
mineralization. In other words, minerals filling in, permeating the pore space. Just
no, that's not all that permineralization is. But okay, whatever.
the empty space in wood or bone or shell. And of course, all the surface area in the wood, bone, and shell, rapid crystallization.
Yeah.
Well, now the woodpeckers aren't going to bother them. Mm-hmm. Now the fungus really can't get a foothold. And of course, they're buried deep enough too.
Okay, let's just take a look at what the the petrified trees in the petrified forest are made of. And if it's not calcium carbonate, then I think we have a problem here.
Hmm.
Let's see. Let's see. Maybe they have it in the frequently asked questions for the Petrified Forest National Park in Arizona, which, by the way, absolutely gorgeous place. If you ever get a chance to go out there, I highly recommend it. It's also near the Grand Canyon. It's near the South Rim. So, like, if you have the time and the money to take a trip to Arizona, I highly recommend just taking like a week or so and check out the Petrified Forest, check out the Grand Canyon. Lots to do. Let's see. Where does the petrified wood sold in the product shop come from? The park, okay. Does the park concession sell petrified? Okay. How are there so many logs? How many different types of trees?
Oh.
How old are these trees? Yes.
I'm gonna send you the image that not the CMBs posted because yikes.
Oh no. Oh.
Yikes.
Yeah, I officially do not like. Thanks. All right. So, by the way, the mineral is primarily silica that replaced the wood in this. So, yeah, you know what silica isn't? Not lime. So, yeah, we'll just take a drink for that. Let's see. Old Publics Creek, who's been a member for 23 months, is at the Tetrapod level, says, AIG is a bag of fossilized teddy bears. You know what? It doesn't technically count, but I want to make Too Young to Feel This Old do more push-ups. So here we go. Here's a drink.
I must break you.
Roshina Cerealist Soup Killer for $4.99 says, did he just say fossilized hat? He sure did. I mean, teddy bears are alive, but their hats aren't. Exactly. How dare he? All right, here we go.
And so that's how they get preserved. And if that doesn't happen, they don't fossilize. And so
it's the only way for things to fossilize is hard water. Except, in all the cases where that's not the case. Like his own previous example of the petrified forest.
even evolutionists will agree that fossils have to form fast.
No, they don't. They often do, but they don't have to.
They don't.
I don't know what often. They definitely do form relatively quickly. They don't always.
At all. Time never formed a single fossil. Time is.
What does that even mean? Fossils don't form instantly.
The enemy of fossil formation. The more time that goes by after a plant or animal dies, or a human being, the less likely it is to be a fossil. You got.
No. Okay, jeez.
Okay.
That's an absurdly stupid way to put this. I'm going to take a drink because it makes my head hurt. And then we're going to get more into this.
Hey kids, if you want to and you try real hard, you too can grow up to be a fossil. You can do anything you put your mind to.
Goop23 et al., who's been a member for 24 months, says, I just named a Pokemon Circuitry, Doctor whatever. Nice. Just make sure that your team also has, like, Captain What's-Her-Name and Captain Obvious and Officer So-and-So. I mean, are the new games still having you have like a team of 6? Is that still like the general number? All right, I just lost my train of thought a little bit. What was he talking about?
I don't
Bury it quick, mineralize.
Oh, right. I had to jog my memory by just listening to him. So, the longer something has been around, the less likely it is to be a fossil. So there's, in some ways that is very, very silly and wrong, and in other ways it's kind of true, and in other ways it's just nonsensical. So here's the thing, right? An organism has to be relatively undisturbed for however it takes for the preservation mechanism that preserves it to take place. Now, that could be anywhere from just, a few years to centuries to millennia to, in some cases, maybe it could be, millions of years. But once something is permineralized, unless that thing itself is weathered away, it's going to last indefinitely. Now, do we have all the fossils that have ever formed on Earth? Absolutely not. The vast majority of them have weathered away before humans ever evolved. But that is a separate problem, right? Once it is preserved by permineralization, it's just a rock. It's not going to get destroyed unless something destroys the rock. So once a fossil, quote-unquote, forms or is permineralized, it will last indefinitely. There's no, like, best by date on a permineralized bone. All that happens is, will it weather away and, it carried out as particles, as sediment, through erosion? If yes, then it's going to be gone no matter how old or young it is. If no, then again, no matter how old or young it is, it's just going to stick around. I had a question, let's see. It was Pokemon Go, so there aren't really complete teams, but the new mainline games do still have teams of 6. Okay, got it. Pokemon Go, the thing that got us possibly the cringiest quotation from any US presidential candidate that has ever happened in the entire history of the world.
Sorry, I know it's not related to the video. I'm just laughing at the War Thunder meme.
No worries.
Today.
It never stops giving.
One place it happens is in the Indian part of Grand Canyon, laid out along Havasu Creek.
Which also, absolutely gorgeous area, but it is not a touristy area. There are people who live there. Now, they do take visitors, but, like, it is not part of the national park. It is a place where people live and do their, that's where they, like, go to school, farm, cook. It's a town. Well, I mean, it's a village, but also, as far as I know, as of now, they still are one of the only places that uses a donkey to get mail in and out. Because
incredible.
Because the village is down at the bottom of the canyon, and the only way to get in or out is on a trail.
There's no way you're getting down there without a.
Yeah, so the mail
I would suggest a drone, but that ish would melt. It just would.
Yeah. So I have not actually been to this part of the canyon, but I have. I'm familiar with pictures of it as well as looking at it on like Google Maps and everything. And everything I've seen makes it seem like absolutely gorgeous. But yeah, again, not a tourist area.
Oh boy, it's this beautiful turquoise blue-green water, big waterfall and all this. But that water is so lime-rich that leaves and twigs that fall in it get mineralized. And of course that creek
No, they get coated in minerals. There's a difference.
Flows down to the Colorado River, and it keeps washing out fossilized leaves and twigs and seeds and things like that all the time, right before our very eyes. And so we know how fossils can form fast. We don't know how they can.
Oh, actually, here's a cool little bit of trivia. Actually, the group that he's talking about, which if I remember correctly are the Havasupai, are also the source for, and there's a bunch of like connected tribes or culturally related to each other. But they're actually the source of one of these so-called flood myths that is almost nothing like the Noah's flood myth that the creationists love to pretend actually is connected. And basically it goes like, oh, there was a big flood one day, and so this person whose name I don't remember because it's been a while since I read the myth, but he was like a traditional like folk hero of a number of Native American groups in the area. He woke up one day and he was like, oh no, everything's flooding. So he takes like an axe and he drives it into the ground so hard that it like splits open the Grand Canyon. And then all the water floods into the Grand Canyon, and that's how the Grand Canyon formed. Which I think is a fun little flood myth, but it's very obviously extremely different from anything in Genesis. And yet, creationists are like, oh yeah, this totally counts. They're just remembering the Genesis flood. It's like, are they? It's like, yeah, it says that the flood was covering the whole land. I'm like, I guess that is technically a connection, kind of. But like, everything else is different, but okay. Roshna Cereal is Soup Keller for $4.99 says, for context, John McKay Hightower was a consultant on Voyager after he was found to be a fraud. Oh no. He was responsible for parts of Chakotay's backstory. Yeah, that makes sense.
Ugh.
Look, I was never a fan of the idea that for the character of Chakotay, who I believe is the first like explicitly like indigenous New World like person of like New World indigenous ancestry in Star Trek. I was not a big fan of the idea that they made up an entire tribe for him and then connected to the ancient alien bullshit. Yeah, that was not my favorite aspect of that show. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't think it was the actor's fault. And overall, I think Chakotay was a fine character. I liked seeing him again in, Star Trek Prodigy. But like, yeah, those were some of the worst parts of that character, and the worst parts of that show, and honestly, some of the worst parts of Star Trek, which overall is a pretty great show that does not normally go into really weird racist tropes, but sure did then, which is just like, thanks, guys. That's definitely what I needed in my sci-fi. Is
I just had a flashback to Sulu with the freaking sword fighting.
Well, so here's the thing, though. Sulu was explicitly given a rapier.
It was fencing.
Yeah, that's the thing. He was specifically given a
know.
rapier because they didn't want to lean into the Japanese stereotype.
Yeah.
They wanted him to be a Japanese guy who was fascinated with, like, like the Age of Sail and swashbuckling. So they gave him a rapier specifically to make it not a stereotype.
That's just funny because, like, samurai were still, like, really freaking active during that time. But that's okay. It's fine.
That's not what he was into, though. Sulu,
yeah.
the individual, he was of Japanese descent, but he really liked the...
Yeah, he's like, oh, this is already part of my history. I already know about it. I want to check out new stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know what?
I will say, people leaning into that, that I approve of 100%, Hiroyuki Sanada.
Oh,
but I do really wish that they would give him action roles that weren't samurai focused, because he really can do good stuff. They just need to let him.
Maybe
He didn't win an award for being in, like, the Royal Shakespeare Company for nothing. Like, the guy is...
Fair. As the Canis lupus familiaris Chihuahuensis Ryu for $4.99 says, they technically didn't make up a new tribe, they just mistranslated the name of the Olmecs, since he's supposed to be Mayan. Thanks, Highwater.
What?
Sarcasm. That makes... I think that makes it worse. Alright, look, I'm going to stop thinking about...
Oh, wait, my sister is saying Filipino-Japanese, not just Japanese. I'm missing context.
And hey, Liz D says that apparently it was originally going to be a samurai sword, but Decay asked for a rapier instead. Oh, okay, that's cool.
Excellent.
Hey, way to go, Decay. Alright, yeah, that whole thing with the Olmecs I think that makes it worse. Because that just also means that not only are you mistranslating the name of the Olmecs, but you're also trying to imply that the Olmecs only got to be where they were because of ancient alien nonsense, which I already hate as a trope. Yeah. Although, I guess to be fair, Star Trek does use the ancient alien tropes for a lot of European groups, too, because they also explicitly said that the Greek gods were just aliens that taught the Greek civilization. So at least they're also saying that the Europeans had that problem. And then in the episode where, Kukulkan shows up in the animated series, he makes it very clear that basically every society out there, no matter how European, got stuff from aliens. Yeah, Kukulkan. Well, I'm pretty sure they called him Kukulkan, but yeah. Yeah, for some reason, Star Trek has leaned into ancient aliens a few times. And to be fair, my understanding is that the episode with Kukulkan was actually supposed to be an explicit rejection of the idea that the non-European groups needed aliens, and instead was saying, no, you guys are just as dumb as everyone else. You need aliens too. Which is less racist. It's still not great, but, you know.
I wouldn't have gone to everybody needs aliens. I would have just not had that as a thing.
Aliens? Yeah, well, obviously that's not an option, because otherwise, how are you going to get Kukulkan into your episode? Because Kukulkan is an objectively existing entity in the canon of Star Trek. There's a thing that exists. You could theoretically go out and meet Kukulkan in Star Trek. I'm going to go with Renee on this one, who's been a member for 8 months and is at the ambient level, says, George Takei shows the fencing for Sulu. Initially, the plan was to give him a katana. Good for George. Star Song for $5 says...
Go ahead.
Star Song for $5 says, George spent some time being tutored in fencing so he could give a proper performance on that episode. That's really cool.
My sister gave me context. Sulu, the surname, is from the Philippines. Sulu is the name of a sea in the Philippines, and it's also a Philippine province.
Okay. But the name Hikaru is not Filipino.
No.
All right, here we go.
Form slowly. But an evolutionist say you're right. You know, flood conditions are ideal conditions for forming fossils.
I mean, that's true. We'll take a drink. Yeah. Many fossils formed in floods. The problem is that you need all fossils to have formed in a flood, and you need to be able to explain...
And it's clear that they didn't.
Exactly. You need to be able to explain the ones that don't seem to have formed in a flood.
you get a lot of mineral-rich water, and you get a lot of sediment dumped on top of a lot of living things all at the same time. So flood conditions are perfect for forming fossils. And a knowledgeable evolutionist might say,
but again, if all that happened, we should be finding way more fossils than we do. And we should find representative species that we haven't, that we don't have right now.
I'm going to put a little bit of pushback in and say we should actually see far fewer fossils. Because the number of fossils...
You think so?
Oh, yeah. Because here's the thing. The number of fossils that we have is far more than could have actually been alive during the course of only 1 year. Because one of the things...
Even if the Earth was in crazy, covered in vegetation, no deserts, smaller oceans, not as many mountains, if any...
So I want you to think about this. There's a kind of cephalopod called belemnite. There are enough belemnite fossils in North America that if they were all alive at once, the entire Earth would be covered in over 1 meter of solid tentacle.
I see this as an absolute win.
Yes, but you also might see why that probably isn't a thing that's actually possible. So, yeah, and that's because
when the Earth was eldritch.
Right. And that's in part because belemnite fossils are actually just the shell, which is a very small bullet-shaped shell that was inside the belemnite. Yeah. If you were to actually find a fossil of the whole belemnite, they look kind of like cuttlefish. But yeah, there are places where when you walk on the ground, it's just solid belemnite shells. And then you also have to realize that all the biogenic limestone also has to have been alive, including the stuff that we know has.
I really feel like this is really more specific to land and air animals than it would be for sea creatures. Because as we know, the sea is extremely diverse. Mm-hmm. And, I feel like they don't take a lot of this into consideration. But, we hear a lot in school about how the number of fossils we find is only a tiny representative percentage of the creatures that have lived, even though we seem to find quote-unquote so many of them. This is a teeny tiny fraction of animals that lived.
Yeah. If all the things that were
there's entire species that lived and went extinct without us finding any evidence of them, any fossil evidence.
If all the animals that had ever fossilized were actually alive at one time, the Earth would just be covered in tens of meters of solid biomass. And I think you can realize why that's not a thing. In fact, like it was saying with the limestone, if just all the biogenic limestone of all those, which are mostly algae, were alive at one time, the Earth would be 10 meters thick of just algae sludge. That's just what the Earth would be. Exactly. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick break. We're a little bit overdue. I'm going to be able to get myself a fresh new cold beer. Anyone who needs to, hey, take a quick break, use the bathroom, get a new snack, whatever you need to do. We'll be back in just a few minutes. And in the meantime, hopefully you guys can hear the musical stylings of Beethoven, because I'm pretty sure I fixed that. And then I see that there are about 3 super chats that I have to get through when we get back, and I will make sure to start with Vandalia 1998's super chat for $5. So, see you on the other side of a quick break, everybody. And we are back. First things first, let's read a few super chats here. Vandeli1998 for $5 says, well, 95% of all aliens, in Star Trek manage to evolve a humanoid form and are able to interbreed with each other. Yeah, look, Star Trek has always been weird like that, and they did kind of explain it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they gave that episode The Chase.
The Founders.
Well, okay, it wasn't technically the Founders, because it is true that the same woman who played the female changeling also played the hologram from The Chase, but technically the humanoid progenitors from The Chase were a solid, non-shape changing species. Although the fact that the makeup was also very similar between the Founders and that species didn't help either. Because it's very easy to look at the same woman in very similar makeup playing two different roles and assume that they're basically the same thing. So yeah, there is that. Star Song for $5 says, fun fact, though never said the original series, Sulu's first name in TOS was supposed to be Walter. Yeah, I like Hikaru way better. I'm glad that it's Hikaru and not Walter. David Z for $5 said, I was covered in a meter of solid tentacle just last week. I failed to see the problem. And David Z for another $5 Canadian says, I was covered in 10 meters of algae sludge just last month. I'm starting to think Dapper and I have very different personal lives. Yeah, possibly. All right, so guys, so real quick, I just want to say thank you so much to everyone who supports this channel, because without you, this channel it would not exist in the form that it currently does. It would be a much more modest channel, with much less content. I would not be able to bring you, like, in many cases, 5+ hours of content a week. And so if you are currently not supporting financially, but it's something you're interested in and can afford, I want to emphasize this a whole lot. If you can't afford it, please don't give. But if you can afford it and you're interested, check out the Patreon that's linked in the description, as well as Vishanti's Patreon that's linked in the description, as well as Bent Hovin's Patreon, which is linked in the description. You can also check out the channel memberships right below this video. There's a join button. My Patreon and the channel memberships both give you access to the super secret Discord server that is just for people who are supporting the channel financially. That's one of the easiest ways to get a hold of me, is to just be in that server, because then it will even let you send me DMs on Discord. Also, you can get early access to videos, usually about 5 months or so ahead of time. So, like right now, the video that came out this past week, I made that video in January. So, like, just think about that. I made that in January. So, yeah. There's also more perks. You can get your name in the credits, things like that, right? If a monthly or an annual thing, because you can also go annual on Patreon for a 15% discount, if that's not your thing. Hey, we got other stuff. We've got a wish list. There's a wish list listed in the description for me. There's one for Vishanti, and there's one for Bent, all in the description of this video. Check those out. There's also a merch store right below this video. You'll see a merch shelf. There's a whole bunch of merch. If you don't like any of it, try clicking on some of it, and it'll bring you to the full merch store where you can search for other stuff. And finally, one free way that anyone can help out is liking these videos, sharing them, and commenting on them. And additionally, if you would really like, there is a way for you to render so that I can get my animations done faster. If you look at the description for my videos, there's a how to render for me. And basically what that does is it instructs you how to get a program called Sheepit, which is links to the render farm that I use. And every time you render a frame, you're either going to render one of my frames, which just directly gets my render done faster, or you'll render a frame for someone else, which will get me points. And the more points I have, the easier it is for me to assign my frames to other users who aren't me, have them render my frames to, again, get it done faster. With that being said, though...
Also, shout out to my Unfinished Journey, who's been linking the streams and promoting on social media like YouTube and Blue Sky, or social media like Twitter and Blue Sky.
Yes. And yeah, sharing this, it really does help, right? So, anytime you share, and yeah, it's a big help. All right, so let's keep going.
Right. See that trilobite, that fossil sea creature over there? That formed rapidly under flood conditions.
Mostly no. Most trilobite fossils are in shale and limestone, neither of which well, shale generally can't form in a flood. It can if there is flocculation which occurs, in which some somewhat larger seed particle starts to have the shale particles attached to it, and then those precipitate out as a group. But in those cases, you get what are called floccules, which are discrete lumps of these shale particles that you can actually see in the fossils. So, for instance, to go back to the Grand Canyon, since we were just talking about that earlier, if you go to the Bright Angel Shale, a bunch of trilobite fossils, but it's non-flocculated, which means it cannot have formed in a flood. It's physically impossible for shale to deposit in a flood rapidly enough to form a shale layer without flocculation. Like, it just can't happen. It's like a perpetual motion machine. The physics preclude it. And limestone, it absolutely cannot form in a flood. As far as I know, there is no flocculated biogenic limestone, which is all the limestone that is in places like the Grand Canyon and other Paleozoic areas where you're finding these trilobite fossils. As far as I know, and I've looked, there are no flocculated biogenic limestones that are just even known. Limestone accumulates the fastest in warm, calm, and acidic seas, which does not describe a flood very well. Now, that being said, lime slumps are a thing, which are basically like underwater landslides, and that is what causes a lot of the larger fossils that we find in limestone. Is that there's something disturbs the muck, and it falls down some incline, burying any animals that are, on the surface or near the surface relatively rapidly in a whole bunch of limey muck. But it precipitated in the first place slowly. The maximum rate of precipitation is like a couple centimeters per millennium for limestone. It's not fast.
Limey muck. Man, buried under the British. What a way to go.
It's terrible. But hey, the reason they're called limeys is because they're the ones who figured out how to not die of scurvy on long voyages to sea. Just drink some lime juice. It's why grog was so popular, because grog is, at its fundamental level, just like water, rum, and lime juice. Nowadays, people mix it with like some simple syrup or whatnot, but like originally it wasn't. It was just a way to get as much lime and rum into you as possible. And, I have to say, I know it's controversial, but Abraham Lincoln has got to be like the worst president because he's the one who ended the rum ration for the U.S. Navy, which, as a former member of the U.S. Navy, I do not appreciate there. So, you know what? I'm not going to say he deserved the whole, Sic Semper Tyrannis thing, but what do you expect when you end the rum ration, guys? Come on.
I mean, look, the answer to the question, why is the rum gone? Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah, basically. It's not okay, guys. You know what? That should be the question that is asked in future presidential debates. Will you restore the rum ration? That's what I would ask. That's why I probably will never be invited. Was one of the many reasons I will never be invited to moderate a presidential debate in the United States. Is because that would be my first
Just show up to a town hall.
Excuse me. Are you going to bring back the rum ration for the Navy? We did exercises with a French aircraft carrier. They had a full-on bar on board the aircraft carrier.
Oh, yeah.
You could just go get a beer. You could go get a cocktail.
About 500 million years ago. See that dinosaur bone? That formed rapidly under flood conditions. And, fossils of man.
Some of them did. That's the thing. Some of them did. But we know of ones that absolutely did not. Like, the famous fighting dinosaurs? We have a velociraptor and a protoceratops locked in combat. Yeah, sandstone. Aeolian sandstone. Not even waterborne sand. There was a sandslide in a desert.
Well.
Yeah.
It's like we find, they're 50 million years ago. What evolution says. But I'd like to ask two more questions.
I mean, it's what geology says, but okay.
Yeah, I was going to say that's geology, not evolution, but whatever.
Yeah. In fact, actually, early on, we'll just take a drink for that's what evolution says. Early on, when geologists were still thinking the Earth was probably only like a couple million years old, they were in conflict with early evolutionary biologists who didn't think that was enough time for evolution to occur. And the geologist answers were just like, tough, we don't care about evolution. We don't currently have a reason to think the Earth is more than like a few million years old. We can't find anything that has to be explained by more time than that. Deal with it. It wasn't until more complex techniques like radiometric dating came around that the age of the Earth was expanded so much. Like, there's a reason why in the 1954 Godzilla, they're like, the age of the dinosaurs, 2 million years ago. Which, not accurate. But the thing was, it wasn't that long ago that people did think maybe 2 million years ago was a reasonable time estimate for the end of the Mesozoic. Russian Cerealist Soup Keller for $4.99 says, read about how the British lost the cure for scurvy sometime. Fascinating. Yeah, that is true.
How
I don't remember.
How do you lose that?
So basically, now this is my vague memory, and I don't remember all the details, but there was a ship where they had taken on some citrus fruit as just regular supplies. And no one on that ship really suffered with any kind of scurvy symptoms. But no one really made the connection that it was because of the specific provisions that they brought on board. So yeah, a British sailing ship just accidentally stumbled into the cure for scurvy. They didn't have a problem with scurvy on that voyage, and then everyone just kind of ignored that fact. It was like, I guess you guys got lucky, huh? Yep. Super lucky. Didn't get scurvy.
The one-time correlation equals causation.
Well, look, no, actually, the thing is, though, things that are causative also result in correlations, right? Causation causes correlation, which means if you see correlation, you should check. You should check. It doesn't mean causation, but it might. It might be because of causation.
Questions. What does science say, and what does the Bible say? And so evolution says millions of years.
Notice how those are completely different categories. Only one of which you can empirically test and verify.
Mm-hmm.
Science and the Bible say,
No, science definitely says...
No, that's not.
I'm going to take a drink, because evolution is part of science. Here's the thing. You can disagree with evolution. Evolution could even be wrong, but it is currently a part of science. And many things that were wrong were parts of science at one point, right? Like the ether theory of light was part of science. That's why scientists did experiments on it. The phlogiston theory of fire was part of science at one point. The idea that there was a substance called phlogiston. Go ahead.
What happened when we did experiments to test the ether method, or the ether?
Oh, it turns out that the only explanations were either that the ether was just tied to the Earth, which seemed extremely unlikely, such that the Earth was always stationary relative to the ether, or there just wasn't a luminiferous ether as a physical substance.
So it's almost like it got falsified.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Huh, how about that?
200 push-ups down. Well, we got another 100 push-ups to go. Come on, guys. If we get enough gifted memberships, we can make Too Young to Feel This Old have to do push-ups for the rest of the day. So someone get 50 memberships. Don't get 50 memberships. That's way too much money. It's way too much money.
Thousands of years. And so we've looked at some of this already.
Oh, Kyle Pratt says, gay furry hackers stole Project 2025 backer data. Absolutely.
That's right.
I did hear about that, which is amazing. Yeah, good on them.
They had it coming.
Actually, I saw
the guy picked a fight with furries, man. Don't do that.
I saw a thing that was like that. It's a very stupid meme, and it said that Project 2025 is just QAnon, but for like liberals and left wingers. I was like, I mean, except that there are multiple people who are explicitly like advisors to Project 2025, which is a known group that is openly operating right now. Like,
it's literally run by like the Heritage Foundation, which is a registered 501c3, which, by the way, you can report because they're not supposed to be involved in politics. And yeah, it's not like QAnon where it started on 4chan as a troll and then everyone took it seriously.
Yeah, like, I guess I can see, like, from an emotional standpoint, like, the kind of similarity that really you're like, oh, hey, people on the opposite side of the aisle from me are using this as their reason for talking about what they think the other side is doing. But the big difference is Project 2025 is an objectively, verifiably existing group. Like, we can name the names, and the people who you name... they're not going to reject that. They're like, yes, I am in fact part of Project 2020.
Yeah, and also it doesn't contain extraordinary claims like rich people harvesting kids for their adrenochrome, or people doing gematria to divine the future of politics.
Actually, I'll be honest. I think if it wouldn't actually be that far, the adrenochrome, the only reason it's actually that far-fetched is because it doesn't work. I do think that if there was a way for billionaires to actually extract some kind of super drug from like the bodies of poor orphans or something, they'd probably start to. But that's just me hating on billionaires.
I'm not going to stop you.
Fair enough. Roshna Serial Soup Keller gets in 5 memberships, adding 50 more push-ups to the total. Thank you very much. And I will take 5 drinks right now. 1, 2.
Yeah, I agree with Star Song. The Michelson-Morley experiment, it succeeded even though it failed. We learned so much from the failure of the speed of light experiment.
Well, that's one of the things, like science.
That's the thing about science. It improves when it fails.
Yeah.
Unlike young Earth creationism.
Yeah, failure is vital to science. All right, here we go.
In other programs, I mentioned a T-Rex leg bone, found in the wilds of Montana. they were excavating a fossil leg bone, wrapped it up, and it was too heavy to carry, so they had to cut it in half.
This is the Mary Schweitzer thing, isn't it? This is going to just be someone crapping all over Dr. Schweitzer's work. Ulf Hazel Creek for 50 sex. Thank you very much. I always do appreciate when I get said sex. Says fitness is part of the theory of evolution. Thus, fitness is science. At too young to feel this old is science.
Yep.
Awesome.
Done.
Figured it out. For $10, Pillowpunk, half dog, half canine, says the Heritage Foundation has been explicitly politically motivated for the entirety of their existence. Yes. If they were to get in trouble for that, it should have happened 20 years ago. I mean, I'm not going to disagree with you.
More people are paying attention to it now.
Yeah,
so
it's one of those things where, like, the fact that they've been getting away with breaking the rules for a very long time is not a good reason not to report them, but it is also the case, right? It's also like there's a whole bunch of churches out there that are telling their parishioners or congregants or whatever you want to call them who to vote for, and they're absolutely not supposed to be able to do that. Do it anyway. Roshan, a cerealist soup color for $1.99 says a fossil-like bone. Yeah, that is a weird phrase, but like I'm just going to assume he misspoke because I don't know what he means other than just like a fossilized bone.
And on the inside, it's practically bleeding. Soft, squishy bone marrow.
It was not practically bleeding. That is not even close to being an accurate description.
We don't have Dr. Joel Duff here today because he would, like, actually maybe it is a good thing because he, like, might burst a valuable blood vessel in his brain or something.
Yeah.
So when the fossil was cracked open, according to Dr. Schweitzer, it did smell bad. It did smell like there was, like, organic matter there. But the only way to get the soft, springy stuff was after a, like, week-long acid bath, where they just kind of forgot that they'd put this bone segment in acid. And they came back later and they were like, oh no! And then, yeah, after a far longer than expected acid bath, there were tiny microscopic fragments of the remains of soft tissue. It wasn't even actually the original soft tissue. There was absolutely no blood dripping out of this thing. Like, yeah. As Dr. Tapioca we still says, Roger?
Yeah.
You know what? I would actually pay to see a conversation between, like, Roger and, like, anyone over at AIG. Like, any of their, like, PhDs.
Let them fight.
I would find that endlessly entertaining. And I would honestly be on Roger's side. Because it's hard for me to dislike Roger. Because, like, I mean, he's obviously extremely wrong about virtually everything. And I suspect that he might have, like, an actual mental condition that makes him think these things. But, like, I don't know, he's just kind of lovable. He's so enthusiastic and friendly and upbeat about everything. And, like, I don't think he's lying.
Yeah.
I think he honestly believes this
But
nonsense.
I mean, I would just love to see AIG try to disprove him because their entire case looks like, and that's exactly what he's doing.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Like, I don't know what grounds they would have to try to disprove him. Strawberry, 5th Super Chat vein for $5 with yet another 5th Super Chat says, for F's sake, young Earth creationists, please leave Dr. Schweitzer alone. She doesn't like you. Absolutely. It's kind of gross the way they treat Dr. Schweitzer, especially given that she's also a fellow Christian. It's like, you guys know that you're just slandering another Christian, right? Like, just constantly. Ben Predictable.
Yeah, but is she really a Christian because she believes in evolution and the ancient Earth?
Yes, she is in fact really a Christian.
I hate it when they do that.
Yeah, no true Christian is a constant refrain from certain types of Christians. Ben Predictable Mutation Thick Tunicate B2022 for £2 says, young Earth creationists think you can actually get blood from a stone. They do seem to
Yes.
Well, of course, they also think you can get water from a stone.
Yeah.
Because they take
But
that
only if you
story
hit
about, right,
like real hard in
only
anger.
In anger, and only if you're Moses.
Yes.
Roshan, a cerealist soup color for $1.99 says, may AIG be pegged by barbed henna beans?
Yikes.
Wow. I mean, I don't like AIG. I'm not sure I'd go quite that far, but you know what?
That's on some 7 freaking vibes there.
Yeah.
Sorry, 7 and...
Well, yeah. You know, I watched that in my Catholic school in theology class.
What? Oh my god.
Yeah. It was like the end of the year, and my teacher was like, look, I'm supposed to make sure you guys know the 7 deadly sins, and after you watch this movie, you're never going to forget them. And boy, was she
Wow.
right. She was absolutely right about that.
Okay.
Yep.
Blood vessels, blood cells with DNA in their nucleated blood cells. Wow.
Oh my goodness. Okay, we're going to take another drink, and I'm going to have to explain the DNA and the quote-unquote blood cells. First, no one has been able to make the determination so far that they were, in fact, the remains of blood cells. They were morphologically consistent with blood cells. Second, yes, a stain for DNA did, in fact, test positive in these structures. However, it is not sequenceable, and it is not even clear that that was actually the original dinosaur's DNA. It is entirely possible that it's degraded remains of bacterial DNA or fungal DNA or anything else. All we know is that at some point, there was DNA there that persists today as tiny, non-sequenceable fragments of DNA that still trigger a stain for DNA to indicate the presence of DNA fragments. That's it. And here's the thing, right? When we say DNA goes away, that doesn't mean it just evaporates into nothing like it got Thanos snapped, right? It breaks down until it's no longer sequenceable, but it's still going to be there as a physical pile of stuff, right? The first law of thermodynamics is still in operation. You can't just delete this matter from the universe. It's going to be there somehow. And if it's at all recognizably still in that kind of, the phosphorus-based chain around the sides with the nucleotides and the double helix, if that's at all there in the way that this stain can interact with, even in small amounts, then yeah, you're going to stain positive for DNA. That's not going to get you, Jurassic Park coming up soon. DM Google Debunker Wing for $2 says, "Did I think this was the first time we broke a T-Rex bone?" That's actually an interesting point. I don't know. I don't know if they realize that this is actually not that unusual of a process, right? That sometimes fossils have to be split into smaller parts in order to be transported. It's a really good question. I honestly do not know. Yeah. I don't think I've ever heard any of them discuss this whole incident in terms of precedent and what had happened in the past. So yeah, I don't know.
Oh, and that stuff decomposes very quickly. There was a little bit of mineralization around the outside of the bone, and it kind of made a protective chamber.
A little bit of mineralization.
The bone was thoroughly permineralized, but okay, sure.
Issue. And the evolutionists didn't know what to do with that. It couldn't possibly be 68 million years old.
Yes, they did.
Well,
at
first they didn't, but then they figured it out, right? At first they were like, well, that seems weird, and a whole bunch of people were like, well, maybe it's these other things. And then, yeah, you know who figured it out? Dr. Schweitzer herself. The former young Earth creationist Christian. Still Christian. The former young Earth creationist, still current evangelical Christian. There you go. That's unambiguous, I think.
Sure, yeah.
And carbon dates. You can get...
I'm just going to take a drink before he even goes on about carbon dates of dinosaur fossils. Although I guess technically you can carbon date some dinosaur fossils. Birds.
Yeah.
Although that always does remind me of the time that someone was like, oh, you think dinosaurs are 65 million years old? What about this fossilized dinosaur foot? And the thing is, it is mummified dinosaur footprint, or foot, in the British Museum. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, yeah, that sure is a mummified dinosaur foot, but it's a moa from New Zealand.
Those birds are huge.
They really are, but also not Mesozoic. It was
I stood next to a skeleton of one in the Harvard Museum, and oh my god, that is one giant bone.
All right, we just got 5 more memberships gifted by Ben. Predictable Mutation, Thick Tunicate, 50 more push-ups for poor old Too Young to Feel This Old. Here's 5 more drinks. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Carbon 14 only lasts a few thousand years.
A few tens of thousands of years, I think, is what you're looking for.
Tens of thousands of years.
You know what, though? Yeah. He's a creationist. We give him 1 free order of magnitude, so technically he's not wrong, because he gets that 1 free order of magnitude.
And yet carbon 14 has been found in fossils all over the world.
Well, first of all, many fossils are less than 50, 60,000 years old. So yes, there is that. But second, when creationists have tried to test fossils that are too old for carbon-14, what actually tends to happen is that, one, in some cases, it's like the lab reports back that, in fact, these fossils are contaminated. In fact, there was one where some creationists tried to carbon test some bones, and the lab sent back a date, but they also mentioned that the fossils had been covered in lacquer, and that this date was almost certainly the date for the lacquer and not for the fossil.
Oh my god.
And then the creationists
Incredible.
just reported this as a problem for carbon dating. They were like, look, we found carbon-14 in this fossil. Like, no.
Why would you want to be honest?
You found carbon-14 in lacquer. The lacquer that was applied in, like, the late 1800s to preserve the fossil for a museum. That's not the same thing as finding carbon-14 in the fossil. And then what?
Yeah, but if they're honest, it like erodes their point. So
yeah, well then they can't be honest. And then most of the other reports of this
get those triangle memes in, folks.
Yeah, seriously, it's some triangle time. And then a lot of the other results that they're getting are just results that, sure, there's a reported age, but it's reported as the maximum age that you can get returned, because you're never going to get an empty test chamber from a carbon-14 dating machine. There's always going to be residual radiation, which means that even if you put nothing in a test chamber, you're going to get a radiometric date out of it. It's going to be really close to the high end of the possible date range that carbon-14 can even detect, but it's going to come back with a number. It's not just going to come back with like an infinity sign. That's not how the machines work. Strawberry 5th Super Chat Vane for $5 with yet another 5th Super Chat says, wait, is this guy saying the fossils aren't what we think, but they are actually just fresh bone covered in minerals, like that cursed teddy bear? I think that actually might be the point he's trying to make. Yeah.
Oh, Lord.
Which, I don't know if I have to tell you guys this, but that's not true. And Ben Predictable Mutation Thick Tunicate B2022 for £5, almost $1, says, to quote Potholder54, hey, Hovind, you can't carbon date this. There's no effing carbon in it. Yeah, I mean...
Yeah.
That is largely the case. All right, here we go.
Too bad Potholder's on this whole thing about climate change. Kind of bad.
Is he?
Yeah, you should check out his recent videos. It's not super encouraging.
Now I kind of don't want to.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
And now that the evolutionists have been forced to accept soft tissue preservation and a T-Rex
forced to accept.
I mean, to some degree, he's not entirely wrong. There were a whole lot of people who were very begrudging in their acceptance of this idea.
Yeah, but they weren't forced.
No, there was no one, like, sticking a gun up to their heads or anything.
The science inquisitors came down from the Holy Darwin Temple.
I mean, you say that, but that was sort of the point of the Star Trek Voyager episode Distant Origins. Remember, there was a scientist who was charged with heresy.
Oh.
Yeah. That's also the episode of Star Trek Voyager where we find out that dinosaurs are whole species. There's a whole species of dinosaurs in the Delta Quadrant, having their own civilization.
Oh, right.
Yep. Distant Origin. Okay, look, I don't know why so much of this is going back to Star Wars or Star Trek Voyager, but it just kind of is. So I'm just gonna roll with it. Look, there's a lot about Voyager that I like. Also, how many other times did a ship captain and her helmsman end up having salamander babies? Only time I can think of.
Which we just kind of pretended didn't happen.
Yeah, well, they decided not to talk about those. Also, apparently, that just makes Tom Paris and Catherine Janeway just the worst parents.
Yeah.
Like, hey, didn't you just have a whole bunch of babies? Yeah, but we left them on a planet to fend for themselves. Like, oh.
They'll be fine.
That's weird.
Find soft tissue everywhere. And a team of scientists, 10 scientists, spending 8 years researching radioactive decay and where that fit into biblical history. And
oh, so the rate team. Yeah.
How to compare creation and flood model. We're able to find carbon-14 and fossils from the upper layers.
They don't really have a consistent or good flood model, though.
They don't. And here's the thing I want everyone to always remember about any time the rate team comes up. You can find their conclusion online, right? Like, the rate report was like this 7-volume pile of just stuff. But the important part is in their conclusion. And if you download the last book, or volume, or whatever you want to call it, of the RATE team's final report, you will find that they said that there is enough radiation to indicate, radioactive decay that is evident in the rocks, be compatible with the 4.5-ish billion year age of the Earth. And that in order to overcome this problem, they are going to need exotic physics, aka magic. The conclusion of the RATE team is that unless physics is different, then yes, the Earth is in fact 4.5 billion years old. And radiometric
Which is one
dating
hell of a
reliable.
conclusion.
Yep. And
Just
yet,
saying.
because they held open the possibility of just miracles explaining all of this away, they came away saying, oh yeah, no, we found sufficient reason to say that the Earth is only 6,000 years old. Yeah, absolutely. It's just that the part that they don't say out loud, the part they keep on the DL, is that only works with magic. The actual report comes to the conclusion that it is physically impossible for the Earth to be 6,000 years old. That's not an actual option open to science. But if you're willing to just say, yeah, but what about magic, though? Then okay, I guess sure. But at that point, literally anything is possible. Asta Canis Lupus Familiaris Chihuahuensis Ryu for 199 says, because Voyager jumped the shark, episode 1. Yeah, look, Voyager has its problems. Episode 1 is a bit of one. Actually, the whole Ocampa, that whole species is one of their problems. Whoever came up with the Ocampa just didn't think about biology at all. Because the Ocampa are portrayed as a species that lives a maximum of 7 years, and that has a total average birth rate of 1 per female, and each female that gives birth requires a male mate. Which means every generation, their population gets cut in half. Because they are only depicted as giving birth to single births. So, like, yeah, there's a whole lot of problems with that.
Life decay, the species.
Right. Dutch Tunicate Demonic Selection for $5 says, I mean, if I were to put money on any group creating civilization other than apes, it'd be on birds, assuming they figure out the lack of thumbs thing. So, with the lack of thumbs thing, I actually think that between...
Corvids are gonna do it. Give them enough time.
Yeah, like, when you look at corvids, or especially parrots, with their extremely precise control over their cranial kinesis, I think that they could probably get a pretty good civilization going just with beak motion. In fact, I mean, I don't know if you know this, but corvids in some cities... and I
they have an economy. They understand how it works.
Not only do they have an economy, but some of them have actually started using bird spikes as nesting material.
Oh, yeah.
Which I just find
absolutely.
Amazingly awesome. And like,
yeah, for the people that don't know, corvids, which include, ravens, crows, and magpies, some of them have figured out that, if you a human trades an acorn with them for, like, a good snack, like, let's say some nuts or, like, little pieces of candy or something. They can get different coins or even paper money and trade them for even better snacks like meat and jerky.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So...
I also love the idea that there were birds who were like, hostile architecture, huh? What if I just turn that into a place for my babies to sleep? It's like, okay. Ask the Canis Lupus Familiaris Chihuahuensis Ryu for $4.99 says, the Ocampa were the result of the writers looking at the anime characters that are actually 3,000 years old and thinking they could do better. Joke. You say that's a joke, but I'm not sure it is.
Yeah, and the thing with corvids, it's like they saw the anti-bird hostile architecture and were just taking it as a challenge.
Yeah, challenge accepted. All right, here we go. Let's get a little bit more about the Grand Canyon in here.
And some of them have domesticated wolves.
Yeah.
At least to be their hunting partners and shit. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, the crows are like the scouts who find prey, and then the wolves go and kill it, and they both share in the meal.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Layers and lower layers of what's called a geologic column, these sedimentary rocks full of...
It's actually usually called the stratigraphic column. It's usually only creationists who use the term geological column, and I don't usually ping them on it because it's not like it's inaccurate, but I just do want to point out that there's a reason that creationists have their own like version of scientific jargon, and it's in part, I don't want to say it's only, but at least in part, it's because if you search for the terms that they use that are different from the terms that are used by real scientists, you will find...
You only get creationist results.
At the very least, creationist results will be overrepresented, which will lead you to staying in the sort of creationist ecosphere of disinformation.
Fossils that are laid down, you see them really great, you know, in Grand Canyon, but everybody's seen them in a road cut or along a creek bed or a drive up into the mountains. These layers, limestone, sandstone, shale.
That's true. I've seen lots of
Yeah,
them in
but
road
again,
cuts. I'll take a drink.
some of those layers in the Grand Canyon physically cannot form in turbulent flood-like waters.
In fact, we're seeing one of them right now. If you look a bit towards the top, right, you see that very vertical reddish layer? That's called the red wall limestone. You might be surprised to learn that it's called the red wall limestone because it tends to be fairly vertical and it's reddish. Anyway, that is a gigantic like tens of meters thick formation of limestone. And remember, limestone forms at a rate of like, you know, a couple centimeters per millennium. Just think about what that means for how thick that layer of limestone is. Yeah.
Very old.
Mm-hmm. It would take
Old
longer.
as balls.
It would take longer for the red wall limestone to form than creationists think the Earth has been around.
Yep.
Full of fossils and so on. And they all had carbon-14 in them, all about the same amount of carbon-14.
That should be your clue. When you actually carbon-14 most things, they don't always come out with the same result. But the fact that you're always getting basically the oldest possible result should tell you something. It should tell you that you're not
really
measuring what you think you are. I'm going to take a drink for not realizing that that's a problem for you, my guy. I
mean, I keep sticking this handheld, like, mercury-filled thermometer into, like, a pile of lava, and it just keeps, like, stopping at 200, you guys. I mean, it can't be that hot. Like, bro, that's the limit of your measuring instrument. That's not the upper limit of the temperature.
Yeah.
And all just thousands of years ago. It really looked like the evidence was telling us all those fossils from the bottom to the top were laid down at about the same time, a few thousand years ago.
No, because if that were the case, then the carbon-14 dating result would be closer to 4,000 years ago. But it's never that. And the thing is, you can say, well, I mean, what about the assumptions in carbon-14 and all this? Here's the thing, man. Scientists actually already know about all of those problems that you're bringing up, and they already have solutions. There's calibration curves based on things like ice core drills, and based on, like, comparing carbon dating to thermoluminescence and other dating mechanisms. And we align the calibration curve for carbon-14 on the basis of independent dating techniques that do not have the same problems. Dendrochronology, thermoluminescence, ice core dating. All of these things independently converge on the same dates for the same objects. There is no explanation for that apart from either God is tricking everyone and just kind of making it look like these independent dating techniques just align, or two, they're giving you reasonably accurate dates. Those are the options. Do you want an omnipotent liar who's constantly lying to the entire planet? Or do you want an old Earth? I don't personally care that much which one you pick, but those are the options open to you. Roshina, cerealist soup color for $1.99 says, Chunky cat at a truck stop, way station. Yeah, it's still gonna read 0. Let's update that. There we go. And here we go.
And even if you hadn't read the Bible, if you heard somebody reading the Bible, what was that? What was that you were saying about a worldwide flood?
No, you would not get that idea.
No.
Just take a drink. There is absolutely nothing about the Earth that is even compatible with a worldwide flood ever having occurred at any point in history. Ever. If you had never heard of the Bible, I'm actually take the drinks. If you had actually heard of the Bible, never heard of the Bible, and you were familiar with the geology of the Earth, and then you heard someone reading, what is the flood, like Genesis 7 through 9 or something like that?
6.
Is it 6?
Yeah.
Is it just 6?
Starts in 6.
Okay.
Starts in 6.
Okay, so it does go for more than one chapter then.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't have every single chapter of Genesis mapped out in my brain. My bad. Anyway, you heard someone like reading through Genesis 6 into like the end of the flood narrative. Your actual response would be like, well, that's just a story
That's
that
preposterous.
didn't happen. Yeah, that's not a thing that ever happened. Roshina,
Cool story, bro.
Cereal is Soup Keller just gifted 5 more memberships. Thank you so much. So let's take some drinks for that. 1, 2.
Well, making it rain today.
4 and 5. Oh yeah. Hey, that way, you know, we're getting too young to feel this old to really feel the burn. And hey, actually, we're close to a fancy avatar. I haven't used my default avatar in 3 videos, so it's possible we could make it so that I had to put up another poll.
Neat.
It'd really catch your attention. You'd be forced to postulate that. Well, the founding fathers of geology.
That's such a weird way to put it, but okay.
The founding fathers of geology.
It's like the Thomas Jefferson of geology. Okay. Whatever, it's fine. It's not an actual problem. It's just a weird way to put it.
For sure. When they were looking at fossils and rock layers, those were the plants and animals buried in Noah's flood.
No, that's not true, though. The first people to actually do rigorous geology, like Lyell and his buddies, they were finding increasingly fewer and fewer reasons to accept the idea of a worldwide flood. That's why some of the earliest geologists had the idea that, well, maybe the flood was just very tranquil and didn't actually leave any evidence in the rock layers of the earth. It was so tranquil that it killed everything, but also left behind literally no evidence. That was an actual idea put forth by some of the earliest geologists because they couldn't find actual evidence of a flood that was worldwide.
The water just swelled up from the ground like an aquifer.
Yeah.
Stayed around and just drained back.
By the way, I still avoid aquifers at all when I play Dwarf Fortress because I suck at Dwarf Fortress. Sorry, everybody. And I know, but light aquifers aren't that bad, Dapper. Yeah, I get it. What do you want from me? I can barely get my Dwarven Fortress to get to, like, the hold level. And yeah, maybe because I spend too much time doing things like engraving the stone floors. I know. I still like it anyway.
Nobody even questioned that. That seemed obvious. And the more you study it, actually, the more sure you can be of that particular...
Literally the opposite of what happens.
That's the opposite!
Look, it's not a coincidence that when geology became a real field of study and more people looked into it, they moved farther and farther away from the historicity of the biblical flood. That's not a coincidence. Like, I really want everyone to think about this. The fact is that everyone who does not already have a deep theological commitment to a global flood, every single such person who doesn't have that, who looks at the geology of the earth as their actual field of study, this is what I'm going to dedicate myself to, comes away thinking that there is no way for there to have ever been a global flood. Strawberry, 5th Super Chat vein for $5 says, the founding fathers of geology, my new name for Mount Rushmore. Nice. All right, here we go.
Idea. But then that raises another question. Why is there a sequence? And so, when I go...
Okay, I think by that he means faunal succession, like the difference between the fossils you find at the lowest layers versus the middle layers and top layers, and, there's different organisms. Yeah, I just want to make sure that that's what people know, that's probably what he's talking about.
Fossil hunting, I like to know what layer I'm looking in, and they just use 12 names for 12 different geologic systems worldwide.
No, there's a whole lot more. In fact, if you look at the far left, you'll see how all of those are divided. Even those divisions are then further subdivided. So, yeah.
And, and if I want to find sea bottom creatures, I might say, are there any Cambrian rocks around here or
No, but that's not true. There are sea bottom creatures from the Cenozoic, from the Holocene, from the Miocene, from the Eocene. There are sea bottom creatures from the Jurassic, the Cretaceous, the Triassic. There are sea bottom creatures everywhere. See, because what he's going to try to do, I'm pretty sure, is the whole ecological zonation. But it doesn't work, because if it did work, then he would be right. That maybe the Cambrian through the Silurian is where you should find aquatic creatures, and there shouldn't be a lot of aquatic creatures in, say, the Devonian or the Cretaceous or whatever. But there are. So, hit play.
Or Silurian. And so those rocks are just chock full of sea creatures.
Well, except for the terrestrial rocks, because we have terrestrial rocks. We have rocks from deserts and rivers and all sorts of stuff from these periods. They just don't tend to have fossils in them because land creatures hadn't evolved. And it's one of the things that really bugs me. It's as if the entire geological column were all just fossil-bearing strata, but that's not true.
And not much in the way of plants, not much in the way of woody plants, or not much in the way of... Well, there's...
Ali the Great, who's been a member for 17 months and is at the amniote level, says, finally caught a stream live again. Well, welcome back. It's great to see you. I hope that you are enjoying, although we are pretty close to wrapping up here. I'm probably only going to let this guy get through like another sentence or two, and then we're going to start wrapping things up.
And is he talking about like the very bottom layers at this moment?
Well, the bottom fossil-bearing layers. They're far from the bottom layers.
Okay. Because
one of the things to remember is that life has only been leaving macroscopic fossils on Earth for a fairly recent amount. Like, it's about 500 million years, a little bit more. Maybe 600 million years on the outside. But the Earth is 4.5 billion years old. There are rocks from before that. And they are much closer to the bottom. And they don't have fossils. Other than, like, tiny stromatolites.
The reason I was asking is, if in his model, the reason you find more sea creatures at the bottom is because that's where they are when a flood starts, as Kent Hovind. But he also needs to describe why there's not as many plants and trees and stuff, because Genesis pretty clearly says that, like, the Earth was freaking covered in vegetation and trees and fruit and bearing tree, all that stuff. So I'm gonna need some explanations there.
Yep. And Roshan Sea Bottom Creature Keller for gifted 5 memberships. And I took the 5 drinks while Vishanti was talking, so that way I didn't have to interrupt and could get those out of the way. So thank you very much, Roshan Sea Bottom Creature. And another 50 reps for Too Young to Feel As Old. We're at 560 push-ups for Too Young to Feel As Old. I hope that you appreciate this. We're also only 21% away from the fancy avatar. Although we are very close to wrapping up, so who knows?
Fish as you go. In fact, there's a lot of fish, but not new.
No, there aren't in the Cambrian. The Cambrian is largely devoid of anything I would call a fish, but sure.
As many as there are in other layers. If I really want sea creatures, that's a good place to hunt. If I really want to find a lot of...
Okay, but why don't you just hunt in, say, the area of, like, North America, which extends well into Canada, in fact, even in Saskatchewan, although farther south than I think these guys live. And by these guys, I mean literally the people doing this channel, because they're always talking about how they're in northern Canada, which means I assume that they're, like, fairly north in Saskatchewan. Whatever. But yeah, you could go into, like, areas from the Western Interior Seaway that were cutting through Canada and the United States from, like, over by, like, east of Alaska down through to, like, the Gulf of Mexico. You can find plenty of bottom-dwelling sea creatures. You can find bivalves, you can find lamb shells, you can find all sorts of stuff. You can find crustaceans. It's right there. You can just do it. Right in the Cretaceous, one of the higher layers. What's your explanation for this, my guy? Unfortunately, though, that is where we're going to have to start. Exactly. But that is where we're going to start wrapping stuff up. Vishanti, do you have any announcements to make? I feel like the answer is yes.
Patient.
Absolutely.
Yeah. My first video is premiering tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Pacific. So get your butts over to my channel if you want to watch me review a Doctor Strange comic. That is for Joshua Yeese, who requested it via Patreon. So if you want to request a Doctor Strange comic for me to review, you can join my Patreon.
Awesome.
I finally broke my streak of inaction. Gosh darn it.
I told YouTube to alert me, which means that there's at least a 30% chance that they'll alert me.
I'll ping you.
I'm sure you will.
And it's not like, it's not going to be my greatest work. It's not going to win any awards or anything. I did it in one take yesterday when I was a little bit tired. My brain wasn't fully functional, but I owed it because Joshua Geese paid for it. And I picked out some of the good panels and tried to have at least somewhat coherent discussion about it. So, yeah. Tomorrow morning, yay. Broke the seal.
Well, I look forward to that. All right. So let's see what is coming up here on this channel. So on Tuesday, Matt with Maddie. Maddie has confirmed. So I am expecting that to all go as planned.
Yay, Matt with Maddie!
Yes, exactly. Also, tomorrow at, I believe, 6 p.m. Pacific, we are hoping to do the Power Rangers Jungle Beasts episode over on Top Hats Off that we didn't do on Wednesday because There was a sick baby, there was a sore-throated ranger, and there was also someone who apparently lost their headset, which is weird to me, but, you know.
Oh, dang. All right.
Yeah, so, lots of things conspired to make it so that wasn't going to happen. So, yeah, that's hopefully going to be tomorrow, again, at 6 p.m. Pacific. So there you go. Then, on Tuesday, Matt with Maddie. On Thursday, we have Incarnate God of the Gaps, the movie. So if you liked the series that I did about the AIG speaker, whose name is currently escaping me, but I think she's fairly new there. Anyway, yeah, she was the one who was like, oh yeah, look at all these reasons to believe that creationism is true. And it all just came down to, I don't think that science has an adequate explanation, therefore I'm going to just assume it was a miracle. Yeah. Yeah, that'll be...
Young to fill this old... Says taking it 20 reps at a time, got 140 left, gonna have to spread these last few sets out a bit more.
guys, if you quickly donate gift a whole bunch more memberships, just keep going. Everyone who hasn't gifted memberships, you all just gift like one membership. Yeah, there you go. Anyway, so yeah, that's going to be on Thursday at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. And that's going to be a multi-hour thing. I think that's going to be like around 3-ish hours. So like, bring a snack. If you have like housework or something to do, it'd be a perfect accompaniment for that. And then next Saturday, the plan is right now to continue with this. We actually got through probably about a third of this video. So it's not a terribly long video. So yeah, it's possible that we'll actually finish it on next Saturday, depending on how fast we go and whether we're willing to go a little bit overtime. So, but it's also possible we'll not even get close, because for all I know, it's going to get way dumber real fast. Yeah. So you can never tell with this, right? All right, and yeah, so that brings us out to about a week ahead. So if you are interested after this stream, I'm going to take a break of just a few minutes, but then I will be back in the Discord server to do episodes 3, 4, 5, and 6 of Power Rangers Mystic Force. So
sweet.
If that's something you're
interested in, I'm going to go take a nappy nap.
Okay, but I'm just going to point out that Power Rangers Mystic Force is the closest to Doctor Strange in terms of aesthetics that Power Rangers has ever been.
Okay.
So, you know, they have wands and magical sigils and such.
Neat.
Yeah.
But is Doctor Strange in it?
No.
There you go.
But Korag is.
Okay.
Also, there's a genie who is actually a cat.
Cool.
Spoiler. All right, everybody, thank you so much. I really appreciate all your support, all just the views. Make sure you hit like, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Share this video. And hey, if you're not going to go watch Power Rangers on the server, queue up another one of my videos to watch maybe. YouTube likes that.
Oh, I get to flex on somebody in the chat. They're saying, I don't think Doctor Strange used a wand at any point. Yes, he did. The wand of Watum.
There you go. All right, everybody. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your weekend, and I hope to see all of you tomorrow for Power Rangers Jungle Beasts, and failing that, on Tuesday. Bye! Hey, before you leave, I just want to take a second to thank my patrons and channel members, especially those pledging $20 or above. Ben Toven, Phil Ravara, Tapioca Weasel, Whispers, John Ackerman, Strawberry Vein, Dr. Tapioca Weasel, Elaround Teller, Horseflesh, Ian Chen, Kelvin Brostick Van Manen, Landon Knoll, Mabdy Babity, Sphincter of Doom, and Ballas. It's because of my channel members and patrons whom you're seeing on screen that this channel can stay afloat. Without you, it would all shut down. If you want to join the team, there's a link to join the channel below this video, and there's a link to join the Patreon in the description. On the Patreon, you can get a 10% discount for pledging annually, and either way, you get early access to virtually all of my scripted videos, often 3 to 5 months before they come out for the general public. Thanks for watching.